Welcome to TSC Talks. You are here back with Jill. I stepped away for a little while. I left the podcast back in February of 2021. I think my last guest was Nikki Lawley, and felt called to take some time to reflect on the work I'd done and just kind of really let it all sink in and figure out what direction I was going in, and kind of just open to, I'm going to say, divine guidance. And that's what I've been on this journey, and finally feeling like I wanted to come back and record another podcast. And I have the honor of being here with my friend, personal friend and mentor, Nina Patry. And I will let Nina introduce herself, but I just want to mention how I met Nina. So I had stepped away from the podcast and really doing some deep inner work and things in my life with my family and children. There were some issues with my son and his seizures and epilepsy and his TSC, which you all know about. So I was feeling a lot of, real stress, and going into deeper dimensions, exploring my spirituality really was helping me come back home and feel healed. But I still, I was seeking. And so I was exploring all these different forums. And one person that I started to follow, her name's Lori Ladd. She's a ascension guide, a spiritual teacher, just a wonderful, glowing human being who brings in a lot of light and wisdom. And so she has a Patreon group. I was on her group, and I was listening. I keep saying we, because obviously I'm going to tell you that I met Nina there, but I just did. We were on this and chatting, and I don't know how we crossed paths. I might have mentioned something about one of my children, and Nina popped up and said she had something that she could related to that. And we ended up scheduling a meeting. Did I freeze? Scheduling a meeting, and
yeah, you did.
Okay. If that happens again, I may have to move back to my office. So hopefully it won't. Okay. Yeah. So anyways, enough about me. I'm excited to have Nina here, and tell me a little bit. Well, first, let me just give a few words about her. So I met her in this Lori Ladd forum, had no idea who she really was, except she lived in Rutland, Vermont, and I live in Rutland, Massachusetts. So we already had that commonality, and we just, we started chatting. She said I don't know whether you had mentioned paradox process at that point, but she was learning this, or she had learned this and was in the middle of learning this, I don't know whether to call it this program for a real therapeutic program that we'll talk about it within the course of the podcast. And, maybe it might be helpful for me. And so we went from there, and I just really appreciate her ninja skills with paradox process, and being a fellow student of life, someone that has had a lot of lived experience myself. I think Nina will hopefully share some of hers. So that's it about trying to introduce you. I think that you can introduce yourself best, but
well, I'm Nina, and actually my recollection of how we met, I sort of think that we had somehow connected, liked each other, and liked each other's posts on Facebook, maybe before we were on that Lori Ladd live together.
Wow. You're probably right.
That's the way I told the story anyway. I that somehow we were aware of each other, because then when you popped up Lori was calling you up to almost be on.
Oh, yes, you're right.
Remember? And you were having technical difficulties, and I was texting you. Somehow I had your number, or maybe it was through Messenger from Facebook. That's probably what it was. I was texting you going, go, come on, you can do it. You can do it. And encouraging you. And then when you didn't end up getting on with her, I texted you and said, well, maybe this was more about you and me connecting than about you.
Right. Thank you.
Today. That's the way I
remember it.
And then when I learned that you had 3 special needs kids, I said, hey, I have 3 special needs people in my family. I have a brother and twin nieces, my favorite people in my family. And I said, and they're all in a wonderful community down in Virginia. And I said, if you ever want to talk about that. And then we had a long phone call.
That's right. Okay.
And it was at the end of the phone call, I said, gee, I'm doing this, learning this thing called this paradox process, and I need people to practice it with. Would you ever consider?
Right.
And you said, I'd be honored. And I was like, oh my goodness. And we've been going since then. We've been,
Yep. Thank you for sharpening my memory. It's not as sharp as I'd like it to be, but now that you say that, it all comes back.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was the way it went, that we had met each other in a forum before Lori Ladd.
Right. We met on Facebook, I think. We just were, I think you're drawn to certain people. I mean, I know
absolutely.
You're drawn to certain people. And I think you and I have been drawn to each other and, communicated some on Facebook. And then we had the Lori Ladd connection. And then we've been off and running since then.
Yes. And it's been great.
Yes, it has.
Yes. Nina has helped me considerably. I will highly recommend her magical abilities or divine abilities. So,
well, thank you.
I appreciate that. So, Nina, let's get back to you. Right. And
so let's see. I think I started to say I've been. Who am I?
Well, you know what? I was going to say, why don't you start with your timeline? I mean, okay. Tell me a little bit about where you were born and
Sure. Well, I was born in New York City in 1947. I'm the first of 7 children that my parents had.
Wow.
So that's been interesting in and of itself.
I can only imagine being only one of 2.
Yeah. And we moved around quite a bit when I was a kid because my dad was a doctor. He was actually I think he was an intern when I was born. And my mother always tells the story that there was a huge snowstorm in New York a couple of days before I was born, and she walked across Central Park. She always said that was what she thought brought on her labor.
Oh, I bet.
He called the hospital to get my dad, and they said, you can't talk to him. He's in surgery. And she said, I have to talk to him. I'm his wife and I'm in labor. So they got him and he came and got her. And they always told me this funny story. They said there were, because of the snowstorm, there were very few cars on the streets of New York City that day. And they always told me, well, this nice man let us have his taxi. In my child's mind, I pictured the taxi cab driver getting out of his taxi and saying, here, take my taxi, take her to the hospital. And I always thought, how did they get the cab back to the cab seat? Well,
of course.
I won't tell you how recently it is that it dawned on me that no, it must have been the passenger that got out and said, take my, anyway. So that's just
that's funny. Yeah. Yeah.
A child's memory. Brain, it's like the way you think. It's very literal, and I still do take things very literally.
As do I.
A part of who I am. Anyway, so we moved around quite a bit. We were in New York for a couple of years after I was born. I had one brother born there. Then we moved to Baltimore for the first time. My dad was at Johns Hopkins.
Wow.
And then we were there for a couple of years. Another sister was born. Then we moved to Massachusetts. He did I think a postdoc up there. And another sister was born. Then we moved back to Baltimore.
Wow.
It was when I was going into first grade. And then we were there. They lived there for 15 or more years. So I graduated from high school in Baltimore.
Okay.
And then after about 15 or so years there, they moved a little bit again. They moved a couple more times. But in any case, so I moved around quite a bit as a kid.
Yeah, I did too. That's funny. Yeah. We haven't talked about that, but.
No. So let's see. So it was in Baltimore, going to a wonderful Quaker school. My dad sent us to a nice.
Were you raised as a Quaker?
No, I was not raised in any religion, as fate would have it.
Okay.
I did have people who I found people actually who took me who took me to church and Quaker meetings and things. I found neighbors. There was a woman across the street who because I often wonder, how did I get this belief in God that I've kind of always
Yeah,
had?
that's what I was trying to like tease
I
out.
Yeah, I'm not sure kind of where that. I mean, I know that my mother's mother, my grandmother, whom I spent time with, was a Sunday school teacher,
Okay.
but I don't remember that even though I stayed with them, I would go and stay with her parents, who were the older grandparents.
Uh-huh.
I think I did that because it was a place where the other kids went to the younger grandparents. This was a place where I could go and be the only one. Plus, she had cats. Plus, she had plants that I could water, and glazed donuts and certain, there were
Ooh, nice.
a lot of things that I really liked about being there.
A safe blossoming spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not that I feel I was ever blossoming that much as a kid. I have to say
Yeah.
I was a very scared kid.
Were you? Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, just from
Yeah.
the start of that many moves before you hit first grade
Yeah.
had to be. I know for me, I think we moved over the course of my upbringing like six times,
Yeah.
and they were spaced throughout my childhood, up until high school. So,
Yeah.
a gift, an unexpected blessing looking back, but not easy. Not easy.
No, I think it's one of the major themes of my life. I've had a whole range of interesting experiences. And part of what I think they did for me, including that my junior year in high school, I was in Germany for a year as an exchange student.
Oh my goodness. I went to
I
Germany right after high school.
Are you kidding?
Yes, but here's the thing. Don't ask me a word of German. I just went with my friend was the exchange student, came to my high school, stayed for a year, then invited me to come back. I didn't go for a year. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
She was there for a year. I went back and visited her for 3 weeks or a month. So
Oh my gosh.
funny.
That is funny. Well, I was there for a year.
Wow.
Didn't speak much German. We didn't have German in my school. I did a little bit at a Berlitz school before I went. Got there and didn't speak much German at all, but learned it pretty quickly. I'm good. I love languages. I've always loved languages.
Have you?
But what I was going to say was, I think the moving around and having varied life experiences helps kind of keep you in touch with this notion, or realize that, okay, there's my reality and there are other different realities. There's this way that I grow up, and there's this way that people live. Oh, and then you go to Germany and they don't get the milk from a bottle in the grocery store. You take the containers to the store and they pump the milk into the container for you, and you carry it walking back and forth. Just
little differences.
Just a little example, but just this notion that life is different and for different people in different places. And I think that's a really good thing to know, because people can get very stuck, especially we see these days, in this is my reality, this is the reality, and if you don't agree, then you're wrong, basically. So I really appreciate that about all kind of the transitions and different experiences I've had in my life.
That's really beautiful. It kind of forces you to be more of a soul, not a role. You're kind of
I think it just opens your eyes in a different way. It's
absolutely.
Not that I appreciated this at the time. I was
I know, right?
I was extremely homesick my whole year there, and in fact, I kind of had a first conversion when I was there, because I met some Mormon missionaries.
Interesting.
And my American Mormon missionaries, and my German sister came home one day saying, "Oh, I saw these Americans today out on the square," and I was like, "Americans?" And I was so homesick, and these guys were the closest thing I could find to home. So I went and found them right away. I was not shy. I mean, I was shy, but I wasn't shy. So I went and found them, and ended up hanging out with them a fair amount, to the point where I started going to church, and they gave me the Book of Mormon to read, and they, asked me to pray about it, which I did. And I woke up one morning thinking I was sure that I had an answer, that yes, this was true. And, it was anyway, wow. It was, I think the best thing about the Mormon missionaries was that when we would fast, so they would fast from like Saturday night after meal till the next day after church. So
So
Sunday I
you
would go
just
to
started
church.
doing that. You stepped
Well,
into that.
well, here's why. The reason I think I did it, one of the biggest reasons, is that after church, I can't remember what happened in church, but I do remember that after church, a bunch of us went out for Chinese food, and then we played volleyball. And I've always loved playing sports. I grew up a tomboy. And so that was my first introduction to volleyball, which,
Wow.
a few years ago at the age of 70, I started playing volleyball again. And I could not believe that I was 70 years old, still able to play volleyball. And I was fairly good. I was a decent player. I couldn't do it for too long because I threw out one shoulder and then the other shoulder. And I finally said, okay, I guess I'm not meant to do this right now. Okay.
Right.
But I was just, I remember playing it a few years ago going, oh my God. And I would tell people I live for Tuesday nights when we have volleyball because
I love that. I love that.
I would go and I would just be sort of dancing around on the
Your inner
court.
child.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had so much fun. And, for me, sports was never, I always said I would rather lose a close game than win a game where we just, knocked out the other team, because I wanted the fun and the camaraderie and the challenge and the physical movement. And those are the things I wanted about the playing. The winning was okay. Winning was nice, but it's never been the main thing for me,
I do. I'm very
So
similar.
anyway, so that's my German Mormon conversion story. At the time, like I said, I was very homesick, and I wrote to my dad and I said, I want to convert to Mormonism, of course. And my dad, being the very astute guy that he was, but the kind of not too willing to face things head on emotionally. And in fact, my boyfriend at the time, I had a boyfriend that I had left, my first serious boyfriend. And he was very concerned because I was writing to him saying, well, if we're going to get married, you're going to have to convert to Mormonism, which he didn't take very kindly to. He actually went down to my dad's office at Johns Hopkins to see him twice. I learned this years later. I didn't know it. But he went down to see my dad, to say he was worried about me. And my dad, being my dad, said, oh, she's okay. She's just homesick. She'll get over it. And to me, my dad just said, well, why don't you wait to convert until you get home, knowing pretty well that, I would come home and this would pass, which it did.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And my dad was absolutely correct. However, the emotional impact.
Absolutely. I can see that, like that threat. So you were just drawn to, like, you were seeking, you were just drawn to this something.
I think it was, I was in life and I was, they were talking about sort of a meaning of life and like a gestalt of what life is about. And it was about the spiritual world and having a father in heaven. And oh my gosh, yeah, if you had a father in heaven, wouldn't you want him to know what you were going through? Wouldn't you want to connect with him? And I mean, I just was like riveted with this whole notion of, oh, there's more to life than this? You mean we maybe come from somewhere else and then we go? And I mean, I think I wrote home at one point that I almost was interested in, this sounds crazy, but dying just to see if it was true, what is there after that, which I guess concerns one or maybe my sister or one or two people. But anyway, I mean,
wow. Yeah. I think I had a fascination, but I was actually kind of indoctrinated while you were we were really deep into conservative Christianity, and come to find out, it turns to be, I'm really grateful for those lessons, but I had to go a long way around to figure that out. But I had this fascination with eternity, with death, with those like expanded ideas, I think.
Right. Those big questions. Well, I think, those two of my big fascinations have always been, one, the human, the mind, the emotions, I mean, my emotions were, as I'll get to in a few minutes, I'm sure. I started pretty early on looking for answers to what was up with my emotions.
Hmm.
And then this whole question of where do we come from? Where do we go? I was always reading about I love near-death experiences.
Yep.
I've read a whole bunch of books on near-death experiences and, uh, things. So I think those were two of my fascinations. Now, two of my loves, I would say my first loves were nature. I've always said that my first friends were nature, first of all. From an early age in Massachusetts, I was going out in the woods, going for walks by myself. And this was before I was in first grade, so I was fairly young.
Wow.
But, going for walks in the woods. And then my cat, at some point, again, when we were still in Massachusetts, so before first grade, my dad came home with it almost makes me cry now, came home with a cat for me. And I just couldn't believe they had given me something so wonderful. I was so thrilled. I was so in love with that cat. She was like my world. She was my safety. She slept right here on my chest, I just loved her to pieces. And
especially being the oldest of seven, I can imagine that, that kind of, I'm sure you felt loved, but that kind of a like bond that you get with an animal is,
yeah,
is
I have to say, I'm not sure I did feel loved. I think I felt my perception of what I did with being the oldest was that I very early on decided or realized that my role was to be quiet and not need anything.
that makes a lot of sense.
So, and I'm not saying my parents abused me or anything at all.
Oh,
like
no,
that.
I hear that.
It's just they were very busy. My father was fairly well known in his field. He was busy. He literally traveled the world during his career. Wow. And he not only did his job, but he wrote books. He wrote articles for the New York Times. He was a kind of a workaholic. He was very invested in his work, and he had a lot of responsibility. He had 7 kids that he had to provide for. So it was. So
you understood it, and you almost like internalized it.
Well, no, I'm not saying I understood it when I was a kid.
Right.
I understand it in hindsight.
Yeah.
I think as a kid, what I understood was every 2 years there was another baby, and my mother had a lot on her plate, and be quiet, the baby's crying.
Got it.
And that kind of thing. I think that's what the picture that I got. So then this cat comes into my life, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I was just, I always say that I never felt actually close to another human being until I was 18 years old.
Wow.
When I first really connected with another human being and felt like I, let somebody know who I was, who I really was, and what was going on with me.
Wow, that's a long time.
Kind of a big secret up until then. But yeah.
Interesting way to put it.
Yeah. So then another theme in my life is I think that I've always had these kind of knowings, I guess. For instance, now the cat died, I think it was 1956, so I would have been 8 maybe. We were in the Adirondacks for the summer, and my cat gets sick, and oh my God, I was so heartbroken. And my dad took her to the vet. And anyway, she died the next day, and I was just,
oh my goodness,
the end of my world. It was a Saturday morning. My Friend Flicka, Rin Tin Tin, all the shows about the kids with their animals were on. I was just so heartbroken. Now, here's the really interesting thing. I mean, that was one of my big first, major losses. Yeah, that I remember consciously. Here's the thing. And I forgot this for a long time, but I realized later that night I had a dream that the cat called me up on a payphone from heaven to tell me that she was all right. Yes.
Beautiful. Oh, I just got like full body chills.
So there was some way in which I think I've always been connected. Another one was that before I went to Germany, so the year before I went, I was in the affiliation club at school, And it was supposed to have been somebody from the class ahead of me that went. So I went in 64, 65. Somebody from the class ahead of me was supposed to have gone the year before I went, but stuff was going on with the Berlin Wall, and her parents decided no, they didn't want to let her go. So then it fell to my class. They made this announcement in our club meeting, and I just got full hot. My whole body got hot flash going, I know I'm going to be the one to go.
Wow, you knew it.
I didn't say it to anybody. I just knew it. I just knew it, and that's what happened.
Wow.
So I think I sort of, I do see us all as spiritual beings who come in and decide to come into the body, have this human life, and that we make a plan, that we make I believe we make a complete plan for our lives, what we want to learn, what we want to experience, who we're going to do it with, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I like to put in this plug for that point of view, because I know not everybody believes that.
Right.
But what I like about that point of view is that even if it's not true, I do maintain that it is the most powerful way to look at life. Because if you look at it that way, as something that you've created yourself, you can always be in the position to say, what's here for me? What's the gift? What is there to learn? What am I getting out of this?
Right there. That's it. I just got, that switch. And I think that until I understood that, it helped me in ways I cannot even explain, especially with my children. It helped me accept, just a lot of history of, just running through life, not just unconscious behavior. So, but knowing, the turnaround being knowing I chose that path, and so.
Right. And I'm not at all saying that I've always had that view, but when I came to that view, and the more that I've held that view, and the more that I've lived that way, I've also looked back on my life and more appreciated what all the lessons have been, what I gained from each, I haven't been through haven't had like a full life review yet, but but I think that I'm doing it. I often think I'm doing my life review as I'm living it.
You are. I think that's part of the process.
Yeah. Well,
it's like I was going to add something to that. I had written this before you came on. In retrospect, how have your perceptions of your circumstances and lived experiences led you to uncover more of your soul's purpose? And I think that's exactly what you've been talking about. So I mean, it's So you had the cat. The cat died.
The cat died. Yep. I have a cat now. That's a whole other story. We won't go into that, but I love her to pieces. I just heard something recently. Somebody posted on Facebook something about behind every great woman is a cat that follows her into the bathroom. And I'm like, yep, I got that. But in any case, okay, so I'm in Germany. I come back from Germany.
Yep.
And that's when I first started realizing that I had things weren't okay. That's, I think, when it became clear that things were not okay. I was kind of a mess when I came back. I literally was like, had so much energy in me, but I could not sit still. I was just driven. I really literally, it was like I couldn't sit down, And somebody at school commented, oh, it's so sad about Nina. Before she went away, she was friends with everybody, and she came back and now she's not friends with anybody. And I felt very
how hard.
My senior year, I felt like I had two friends in my class. And that's a whole nother story. But anyway, so that was the start of me looking for help.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that I'm trying to think when. So wasn't that first year. So I graduated from high school. Having been away my junior year, I had no idea what's college all about, what's applying to college.
Right.
I felt very lost in all of that. But I did it, and I went to college. And then something happened my year away at college that I got very upset about. And that was the first time I went to my dad or my parents and said, hey, I want to talk to somebody, and my dad was not big into wasn't crazy about the whole field of psychology, but
that was like back when, and I hate to cut you off for a minute, but even when I was in my, like in the 80s and I wanted to go to, it still wasn't. It's like my parents, I remember them feeling like they failed because I went to therapy or something.
Yeah, like I imagine that could be it. And there was you should be able to do it yourself. And
right.
All
Bootstraps.
This kind of stuff. Right. But anyway, that was kind of the start of my seeking help. And I think in my senior year in high school, I was reading Freud and I was reading all the psychologists and trying to figure out what was going on and everything. And, anyway, so I graduate, I go to college 1 year, then I transfer to another college my second year.
Okay.
Then I get wrapped up in, I'm at NYU downtown my second year, and get wrapped up in, I have a friend from Baltimore who comes to be with me at my second half of the year. She's very politically oriented. Martin Luther King gets killed. We get arrested at a demonstration in Philadelphia that weekend. Then the Columbia sit-ins happen. We're there, etc. We end up both dropping out. We live in the East Village for a while.
Wow.
So, right.
Yeah.
East 4th Street between 1st and 2nd.
I want to say that sounds like fun, but
not exactly.
No. Okay. Okay.
It was different. Again, it was different.
Mm-hmm.
And meanwhile, I'm still looking at that point. I think my friend was going to she started going to an analyst. She had gone as a kid. She was from the Jewish school in Baltimore. There was and a bunch of them that I became friends with after I graduated from high school, they were in the class behind me. And it was more routine for them to go to psychologists as kids, I guess. Several of them had gone to a number of psychologists. And
so you fit in.
She started going to somebody. And so I was just following. I didn't know what I wanted. I was kind of pretty lost, just trying to get through each day. And started seeing somebody up there. So in other words, this is kind of leading up. Eventually, we're going to get to paradox, because I've experienced all kinds of therapies.
Interesting.
This was the experience of laying on the couch with the guy behind me.
Oh, you did that.
Smoking his pipe, drinking his tea, while I lay on the couch, looked at all his books by Freud, etc.
Like Woody Allen.
He might have been napping. I'm not sure he was always awake. But in any case, I had that experience.
Okay.
Then I end up, my friend is going to leave New York. I can't stay there by myself. I moved back to Baltimore for a year. Mm-hmm. I work in a kindergarten for disturbed kids.
Interesting. Because you were familiar.
Yeah. So then I'm about to finally move out, because all my life I'm like feeling like I just can't make it on my own. I felt so, life felt too overwhelming.
I can relate to that.
So I'm about to move out to Philadelphia to live with a couple of friends. And I come down the stairs in my home in Baltimore, and I get drawn like a magnet to this book that's in the front hall that my dad has brought home from the office. Really funny that he would bring home a book on any kind of therapy, given his feelings about therapy. Mm-hmm. But it was a book called The Primal Scream, which I swear to God, Jill, it was like a magnet. It was like just
I could see that with what you told me.
I didn't see the title. It was just literally like a feeling, like a
all on feeling.
It seemed like all feeling.
Okay.
So I start reading this book. I take it upstairs. I have my first quote unquote primal about my cat. No surprise there. I call up Janov's house. In those days, this is like probably 68, 69, I guess. Mm-hmm. In those days, you could, maybe even 70. I guess it was 1970 by now. you could still call information and get somebody's number. So
Right.
I called information in Los Angeles. I got Arthur Janoff's number. I called his house. His son answered. Arthur Janoff was away. I said, please, send me an application. I want to come and do this. I was sure this was going to answer all my problems, because that's kind of what the book promised. So eventually I go out there. I start December 7th, 1970. I start my intensive at the Primal Institute. Right?
Wow.
Now, it did not exactly deliver what it promised. Mm-hmm. And long story short, I end up 6 months after I get there, one of the training therapists splits off from Janov because the two egos couldn't exist under the same roof. He starts another place called the Center for Feeling Therapy. I go with those people. It turns out to be like the biggest cult of its kind. The 70s.
Oh, okay.
There were a lot of cults, Synanon. There were a lot of those things going on. So I'm in this. I end up being in this cult for 10 years, basically.
Oh my goodness.
A therapeutic community, right? That's the answer to everything. Not exactly. Anyway, so I learned a lot. Again, in retrospect, now when I look back and I go, I learned a lot about brainwashing. I learned a lot about peer pressure. I learned a lot about going along with the crowd. I learned, just how all those kind of dynamics work, which I think is very relevant to a lot of what we're going through today.
Absolutely.
So anyway, so I'm in this cult for 10 years, then that falls apart.
That must have been really challenging. 10 years.
It was not an easy 10 years, but again, it was
circling back, it made it.
And one of the things again that I got out of it, I would say, is that it for one thing, it kept me in touch with this notion of our emotions and our feelings and that aspect of us as humans, which was so key to me, because that was what I was always trying to solve. And it also kept me on, life can be different than what most people are doing.
Kind of like almost listening to your own voice, even though you probably didn't feel like you were.
I wouldn't say I had a voice at that time.
Right.
But anyway,
something was like pulling you like to these experiences, it seems like.
For sure. No. Again, when I'm looking back on it, I can say, I believe I totally planned this. If I had to plan a life for myself to get me to where I am today, I couldn't have planned it any better. Excuse me. So then that falls apart. Mm-hmm. I end up moving to Vermont. I had a friend, one of my two friends that I felt was my friend in high school, my senior year, is living in Vermont.
Nice.
And one of my brothers is living in Vermont. So I come to visit. I come back to live, and thank God I did. I feel Vermont has been so good to me. I've been here since 1981.
Wow.
I love Vermont. I feel very safe here. I've had, again, different experiences, including, shortly after I got here, I met these people who were living out in the woods with no phones and no electrical hookup and outhouses.
Oh my goodness.
I'm looking at these people going, when I first met them, I remember thinking, these people are crazy. I could never do this, because here I had moved from LA, where I was wearing makeup and doing my hair and getting my nails done every other week and blah, 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 wearing heels and, this whole thing. I come here, I get my Sorels, I get my cross-country skis, I give my heels away. And,
wow.
And so again, I say I could never do this. Never say never, because I had also said LA was a place I would never live. So I ended up there for 10 years. So shortly after saying never say never about these people living in the woods, guess what? I'm living in the woods.
Wow.
With the outhouse and the whole 9 yards. And it was so peaceful. I feel like it was so healing. And the people I was there with were wonderful people.
Oh man, I bet you learned a ton.
It was so slow. it was, you couldn't drive up to the house that I lived in. You had to walk or ski in the winter.
Whoa.
You know, it was, there were nights that I would ski in the winter with a pack, you know, having gone shopping at the co-op. I was working part-time at the music department at Dartmouth College by then, skiing in the winter with this pack on my back of food, just about in tears because my hands were so cold. Everything was so cold, and I just wanted to get to the house because I knew it would be warm because there was wood heat.
Oh my goodness.
But just miserable.
That's a different experience.
Yeah, the whole thing. You know, here's a funny story. My mother says to me, and I ended up getting a horse, part of moving to Vermont and then living in the woods. I had bought a horse because that was part of the dream of living in the country, right? Every girl wants a lot of girls want a horse. And so I had oh, that's what I was going to tell you. So I'm out there one day, I'm 35 years old. And a friend of mine wanted he thought he wanted a horse. So we bred my horse. She had a baby. Right. So I'm out there one morning kicking the ice out of their buckets. And they're in the woods with us there in the winter. In the summer, they were over on pasture. But and my mother has said to me, here's my mother picturing me living in the woods with an outhouse, et cetera, et cetera. And she had said to me, how can you be living such a hard life? So one day I'm out there kicking the ice out of the buckets, thinking, hard life? Wait a minute. When my mother was my age, she had 5 kids. The hardest thing I have to do is kick the frozen ice out of their buckets on these, you know, under 0-degree morning. That's the hardest thing that I do. What is she talking about?
What is she talking about?
Again, it's this whole relative reality, you know, the people look from the outside, just like me looking from the outside saying, I could never do that. And then there I am.
Yep.
You know, anyway, so I lived there. Anyway, eventually, if we're going to get to the end of there's not an end to my story yet, but to where we are now. So eventually I leave that situation. I go to massage school. I go to school to be a massage therapist, and I meet my husband, May 1st, 1989, 5 p.m. I know exactly where when I met him, because he was the only guy in the class. It was a very small class. Anyway, so I meet my husband, and he wasn't my husband then, but and that's been wonderful for me. And I won't even go into all that because I get so much from, you know, I didn't know if I'd ever get married. I was 49 by the time we got married.
Wow. That's
my first time married. He came with 2 kids. Mm-hmm. So I feel, again, I must be living right because I ended up with 3 grandchildren, never having birthed a child in his life. I think that's a good thing.
Tell me.
You know, and he's, you know, more than I, better than I. But, you know, so that's he's been another blessing. Not that it's been easy. We've certainly have tons of ups and downs. And in some ways, I think our souls are very similar, but then we have some real differences, and we have some
interesting
differences about current reality. But there's, you know, I've just gotten so much, and he's, you know, he's one of 9. His family, unlike my family, were brought up to be best of friends. His matriarchal Irish mother had been an only child and did not want anybody to suffer the fate that she felt being an only child was. She and her husband had 9 kids, and they were raised to be each other's best friends. And so it was a
different experience.
The family that I always wanted my family to be. It was much to me. You know, and if my siblings ever listen to this, they'll go, "Oh, that Nina, she's terrible. You know, she doesn't appreciate our family." But you know, but it was just, that was just one part of. There were just so many parts in who my husband is and how he cares about people. He's the kind of guy that, and he's also had a range of experiences. I always say he's been everything from a massage therapist, a corrections officer at one end, to a massage therapist.
Wow.
And ended up his last 25 plus years as a teacher at the technical high school.
So cool. You guys are like
Yeah.
rough life riders or something.
Well, or something.
Something.
You know, yeah, so that's been a wonderful blessing.
I bet.
Him, his whole family, and the kids, and now the grand. So, all right. So now to kind of
Yeah, bring us up around to present day.
okay, so let's go to March of 2020.
Sure.
Okay, March of 2020. This people are starting to hear about this virus, and I remember somebody at work, and by now I'm working. I had a number of different jobs through all of the 6 different lifetimes. I worked at Middlebury College for a while, and then I ended up getting. They were going to fire me. They gave me the option to resign. Blah blah blah. But and I count that as another blessing because I ended up working at Home Depot and then working for the Vermont Country Store, working at a vet clinic. I worked at a vet
Wow.
clinic for 8 years in the kennels with the animals, which was to me was like going back to my roots of who I am.
Yes.
I love the time with the animals. So I've done a number of different things. Never had a quote unquote career. Toyed with a lot of things. Always studied. Is always studying. Going to Tony Robbins things, still looking for answers, studying whole food, plant-based nutrition, always folk wanting to be healthy, looking at health. What did that mean? I've said I never met a healing modality I didn't like.
I love
but,
that. I remember when you shared that.
Yeah, and it's true. And I've studied a lot of things, and tapping. I was into. I love tapping.
Oh, you did that? Mm-hmm.
That was one of the most effective things I ever found of all the things
Really?
I've ever done was tapping. I love Brad Yates's work, but
yeah, I know a lot of people that have spoken highly about that.
Yeah, so. It's very good. I always, when I first met Paradox, I kind of wanted to meld tapping and Paradox was my first thought, but and I studied quite a few of these modalities. I would start training in them, thinking, well, I could teach this to people, and I never made that step to completing the training and going on to being a teacher until now. So March of 2020, this quote unquote pandemic is here. And I remember somebody asking me at work, and now I'm working for the Vermont Country Store, which is, had a lot of great things about working there. I'm on the phones as a, customer service rep.
Okay.
And then first I'm a sales rep, then I'm a customer service rep, and then I get to work in retail. But what I was going to say about losing my job at Middlebury College was I got to experience these kind of more blue collar, different kinds of jobs. I got out of that higher education.
Yeah. I've done that too, and it's definitely been a blessing in retrospect.
Yeah. So, because I definitely was kind of an elitist myself, I have to say, looking down on people who weren't, of a certain whatever.
Oh yeah.
But my husband helped me with that a lot because he's not that in the elitist crowd at all, and he's
so cool.
But one of the smartest people I've ever met. So anyway, so March, I remember somebody at work asked me, and are you afraid of this, Nina? Are you afraid of this virus? And I said no, and I just never was. I just never had a fear about it. And then the end of March. Oh, I didn't even tell you the whole part about how I eventually got diagnosed as bipolar. I was medicated for decades.
Were you really?
Couple of decades. Yeah, I was on psych meds. Tried several times. I got a diagnosis of atypical bipolar. Tried to take myself off meds a couple times. It didn't work. Finally.
So you've been through the mental health system.
Yes. I was told anytime I would want to, I was told you probably have to take these for the rest of your life, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I would try to take myself off them. Wasn't until this last time I've been off them for over 3 years.
Wow.
Successfully. I consider myself meditated rather than medicated because I found Emily Fletcher and Ziva meditation. And that was the first time. I mean, tapping kind of does this, but this was the biggest push I had ever had to go inside.
Really?
Yep. And I love the meditating, and I give it a lot of credit for me being able to successfully finally get off the meds. I also give Peter Bregan and his work a lot of credit because he has a book called, I think it's called Withdrawal from Psychiatric
Yeah.
Medication, something
Yeah.
like that.
I followed some of that just because I did I went off of too.
Yeah, he talks about the awareness that when you come off of them, you go through withdrawal with a lot of them. And if you're not aware of that, what happened to me the other times I would try to take myself off them was I start feeling lousy physically and emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
And I and my husband and my best friend all go, see, you need the meds. And
Right.
you go back and you
So
take
it's a cycle.
Yeah. But once I got Peter Bregan and his work on board, and I understood, okay, withdrawal doesn't mean you need the medication. Withdrawal means you've been addicted to something, you know. And between that and Emily's meditation, I was able to stay. And my will, I think by then I was like, I do not want to take these things anymore.
Yeah.
And then I had a very interesting experience of first my brain clearing. Because there were times when I was medicated, when I think people in my family would say, kind of make a reference to me being slow or me being, I think
Oh, yeah.
once, Nene, you just seem like you're drugged sometimes. And I'm like, in retrospect, well, I was drugged. Yes, that's true. But, so I would, but my own personal experience when I came off them was first that my mind cleared. And then my emotions, my heart cleared. And it took a while. It wasn't overnight. It took months, if not a year or more. But it was a definite feeling of, things were clearing out. I felt like I could think more clearly.
Mm-hmm.
I could feel who I was more clearly. Okay, so I'm off medication. It's 2020 March. The pandemic is starting. The lockdowns are starting.
Yeah.
And my meditation teacher, Emily Fletcher, sends out a video. She's decided that with what the world's going through, we need to meet Thomas Jones and his work, the paradox process.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of the co-creators of the paradox process. So she sends a video out to all of her Ziva students, her meditation students, which is a worldwide group. She's got people meditating all over the world. She couldn't understand why everybody doesn't do this. So she decided that's what she wanted to do, was help everybody do this, meditate. So I watched the video. You've seen the video.
Yeah, and I will put that in the notes for anybody that wants to explore Ziva meditation and paradox process too.
Right. Great. So and I did the exercise along with Emily, and it was Thomas working with Emily about what kind of perception did she want to have, or could she have, about this lockdown and what we're going through, and sort of shifting the way she saw it and felt about it. So and I did the exercise along with her in watching the video, and I was just amazed at the effect it had on me. It was just like, oh my gosh, sign me up. I want to do this. I called my best friend. I said, who had also done Ziva meditation. I had told her about Ziva meditation. She had done that too. I called her up. I said, you've got to watch this video that Emily sent us. She watched it. She also had a profound effect from doing it. And
amazing.
Then I started going to the Monday night classes. Thomas offers a Monday night class on Zoom.
And can you just, before you go right into it, could you just tell me in brief, I pulled up the site and paradox process, like it brings the conscious mind present by eliminating negative emotions from the past and clearing anxieties and worries about the future. And this results in an emotional shift that uncovers insight, thus allowing the individual to reveal the best version of himself.
Right, exactly. So I was walking back from getting my hair done this morning, and I was thinking about talking to you, and I was thinking, paradox process is a number of technologies that help you uncover your true self, help you get down to your true self.
So true.
Because I believe, there are a lot of different ways to talk about this. There's the right brain, left brain. There's, for the spiritual people and spiritual, there's the higher self and the ego, or the identity. there are a number of ways you can talk about this, but however you want to word it, my belief is we all have like an authentic, true self. I think there are many, many people living on the planet who have a sense that, wait a minute, what I'm experiencing is not exactly what I think life is really supposed to be. That
Totally.
it really, I think it's I think a lot of people kind of feel like, I think it's supposed to be different than this, or at least
Yeah.
it could be, and
that kind of hole in your heart, like what else is there? That
yeah. Is this really all it is? Am I supposed to doubt myself and feel bad about myself this much? Am I supposed to be this scared? Am I, you know, just aren't things? Couldn't things be better than this? Couldn't I be happier? Isn't there? Is there something more I'm supposed to be doing in my life? All those kind of questions that I think people. Well, and the paradox process gives the best tools I have ever found in all of my searching, for getting in touch with that. And again, like Ziva meditation, it sends you inside for your answers. But what it has is actual technologies that help clear we talk about clearing the excess emotional charge, because all of those negative feelings and beliefs actually keep us from seeing a clear vision of who we are and what the situations in our life are.
wow, beautifully stated.
Thank you. And when you clear that, everything looks different, and you see possibilities. You see different possibilities. Life kind of opens up, and you feel more empowered, clearer, and you can make different choices going forward, and thereby get different outcomes. And
Yes, and I can share with you the little experience with paradox process. I've had a lot of healing modalities over the course of my life, and really done a lot of, in the last few years, done a lot of real deep inner work. Kind of I have my own unique process with running, and and cannabis was a part of my process. And so I think that I had some awarenesses. I had a lot of deep inner, I knew a lot of stuff. And so when Nina wanted to do paradox process, I was like, this looks interesting. I'm always like willing to try something, especially in this. I think I was fairly new to the spiritual community, but anyway, so we started it. And honestly, Nina, at first I was skeptical, because to me, like, I feel like I had to be ready to open myself. And I think when I first started, I was still really tight, and so I wasn't like feeling it. But we practiced it, or we did it over the course of it. Took a while, and I had a huge breakthrough that I don't know how I would have ever gotten to that. I mean, it doesn't matter. I'm grateful for the breakthrough that I had, that really opened up some windows for me, and again, changed my perceptions really quickly. Like it was just like I had to actually go in and like be engaged with the process and feel it. And I will tell you, it was an intense process, but it was quick, and it opened. And so I can't recommend it highly enough. I think it's really a unique tool.
Let's also say that it's fun doing it, right?
Yes, it's a lot of fun.
Down and dirty and serious and hard. It is work. It does require work, application, and practice. It's also fun.
It's fun. Like I'm sitting there crying. Like these feelings are coming up, but pretty soon, you're right back in it, and we're laughing, and it's a beautiful, beautiful opening. And so,
well, thank you. And I will say, you have been a pleasure. You are a pleasure to teach. I can see.
I'm a student of life, Nina.
I know. And and I know the fact that you and I have so many commonalities helps too. There's all that, but
thank you. Thank you. So,
yeah, you're welcome. So now at this point, and it took me a while. So I found paradox. I also found Lori Ladd, through whom we connected. And I would say between those two things, which to me go beautifully hand in hand.
Yeah, they kind of do.
I have never been happier than I have since this pandemic came to our lives. I really, really haven't. And I know that's going to sound strange to some people because I know people are suffering. I understand that. I've suffered a lot in my life.
You shared, like I think you through your talk, I could feel, I mean, we can't go into depth. I could just feel around the outsides of some of that. And that's a lot of living.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
So
Yeah.
yeah, you walked through a lot.
And now I'm going to take my test to be a facilitator.
Right. I wanted to mention that. So she's
December,
going to be right.
Early December, 51 years after I started Primal therapy. I have told Thomas Jones, I said, I went to Primal therapy 50 years before I found you. He promised to help me with my emotional upsets. He did not deliver. Thank God you deliver. Thank God I found you, because you deliver. And so I can't say enough good things about the process, the people. It's a really interesting group of people. I mean, a lot of them are creative people, which I think is
interesting.
I had, they were singers, or they were, one of the main facilitators was a costume designer before, another one was a singer. So what I had connected with them being performers, creative people, was that being in touch with that creative part of yourself is really part of what the paradox process is going after. And somebody else said the other day in one of our classes that what was I going to say, that as performers, that they're people who are used to using their body as their instrument. Right, which is also what you do, because the clearer you are about yourself, the better you understand the other people that you encounter in life, in whatever way. It just things just become clearer. The other thing I will say, because one of my big concerns before I signed up to take the training for the first time, of course, given my history, is this a cult? That was probably my biggest question.
Yeah, and when you first introduced it, I had that thought. I thought this is something I've never seen before. That the feeling clear sounded like it could be some like weird thing, but yeah, I can see that you would hesitate there.
I asked, several people. I asked a couple of the facilitators about that, and I came obviously to it got answered to my satisfaction that it wasn't. And I would say one of the clearest things, so one of the facilitators I talked to about it, when I asked her that question, she was like, I know what you mean. She, in fact, had lost a good friend to a cult.
Wow.
So she had the same red flags go up. But what she said to me was, they never tell you, nobody in Paradox is going to tell you what to do. And number two, they're always pointing you back inside for your own answers. You're always being redirected. It's just clearing out what's inside you for your own answers and your own insights.
And that's the one thing I loved about it is, it takes some time to learn it, but it's not something that you can't do for yourself. It's not something that's going to keep you dependent on any system or anything. So that's really,
it's to put tools in your hand to be able to take care of yourself. So as Thomas said recently, when you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and you don't have a facilitator of the paradox process there, you don't need to call them, because you've got tools that you can deal with what's going on with you.
Right. And I think I've gone so far to it. We talked about introducing it to my son, Jack, who, has some learning challenges. And, just recently he seems to be, figuring out how to introduce it to him and just making it as simple as possible. Now he has a sign on his wall that, thanks to our discussion, I just wrote it. I took a Sharpie and I wrote it big. And the minute he saw that, Nina, I knew that is exactly what he wanted. He was like, oh, like he had said, could you make me something? I can't remember. And so we did that. So I think the opportunity for people that have special needs or whatever, however you want to phrase that, it's a great tool that works quickly and really can provide just a lot of healing, I would say. And I don't know.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad he had such a good response to seeing the sign. That's great. I would also makes me think, my original thought when I went to primal therapy was that if that worked, so my youngest brother has Down syndrome, Christopher, right?
Right.
And my original thought was, if this works, I'm going to come back and teach it to my brother and people like my brother. Now, I don't know that I don't even, he's fine now. He doesn't need that. He's going to be 60 this month. And
Wow.
he's doing really well. And he's
It's
in that
beautiful.
wonderful community. But yeah, I'm so glad Jack is getting benefit out of that. That's great.
So yeah, you've been like an amazing blessing in my life.
Oh, thank you, Jill. Thank you,
I had to
Jill.
say it before I forget.
I feel the same about you. And do you see what I'm wearing?
Yes, I do. Yes.
You're good.
It's like your power bracelet, power up.
It is.
Yeah.
I wear it every day unless I'm going to do something where it might get dirty or I might break it.
Yeah, I know. I have them too. I have a few of them, and you know where they sell them at the Rutland Pharmacy. We have a pharmacy that's like has a little bit of everything.
I think we have a Rutland Pharmacy up here. Yeah.
You should see if they have any bracelets. It's like they have these weird things in there. I started looking.
They might. I know they do have a variety of things in there.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a Rutland Pharmacy franchise for every state that has a Rutland in it. Who knows?
Right.
That's funny. Hey, so let's talking about the paradox process. I just want to say, since we're on it,
yes,
if people want to experience it, there's Emily's. We talked about Emily, the video with Emily and Thomas. There's also a great interview with Thomas Jones by Luke Story, which tells you a lot about who Thomas Jones is, how he sees people, how he sees emotions, how he sees life, which I find very informative. I've listened to it a number of times. I always get more out of it.
And I can echo that. Yeah, it's great video.
Yeah. And then if they want to experience it more themselves, if you go on the website paradoxprocess.org, there are Monday night classes that usually Thomas teaches that I've been going to ever since I found them. I don't think I've missed a Monday night class. Wow. And they're great. And those are $25, well worth it for class. And then, but on Thursday nights, that's at 8:00 and it's by Zoom, and they just send you a link. And then Thursday night at 7, there's a basics class taught by some of the senior facilitators, which is 45 minutes. I myself often go to that. I always get something out of it. Because as somebody who's learned training to be a facilitator, I just want to
soak it all up.
I do. I want to soak it all up. I get to observe how the teachers teach the people in the basics class. I just learn. I feel like a sponge. I feel like this is my destiny. This is what I've always been looking for. I prepared myself really well to be in a good place to take it on when I met it, and now to embody it, basically.
Beautiful. Yeah. And I can just feel like how after hearing all your lived experiences, just, I don't know, how each one kind of built a little platform that not only led you forward into where you are now, but will return as you go into Paradox and as an instructor, just your relatability with people based on your lived experience. I think that's one thing for podcasting that I appreciate all my experiences, because whatever I'm interviewing someone, I can find some like little thing in their past, like, oh, you lived in Chicago, or oh, you did this. And I'm sure the same's true for you. And that just like right there, it like opens up the bond. Yeah. So you can see that you're well prepared, and you just embody so much joy. I have to tell you that. Like, I mean, not the whole time, but like there's just this humor and joy in your presence. So that kind of has led me to keep, I think to keep sticking with Paradox as someone who has had done a lot of healing and stuff. At first, I was so curious, but it really took, and this has been my process. I had to be in my heart. So I can talk and understand all these things way up here, but like I have to like feel it in my gut, and so I did, and I just honor you. So
well, thank you, Jill. Thank you. I appreciate that. You almost brought me to tears when you were talking about me and my experiences. And I appreciate your appreciation of me.
Thank you.
And,
Yeah.
you know, this has been really fun.
Good. Yeah. That's all the questions I have for you. Unless you have anything else to share, I will.
I
I'm
think
going to
we're
post all that information that you mentioned, the links. It'll take me a week or so to get this process. But I will. It'll all be in the show notes, and people should take advantage of this. I think. Well, not should, but if you feel called,
right.
yeah.
If you want to, as Laurie says, if it resonates.
If it resonates, yeah.
If you're interested, if you're intrigued, if you're whatever.
Yeah.
If you're
exactly.
curious.
If you're curious. Yep. Yep.
All right.
All right. Well, that's all I have. So thank you, Nina, and God bless. Love you.
I love you too, Jill. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Oops, I made a stripe.